They're waiting to see how long will 8 billion people allow 100 families to control them. And so, yeah, I'm just saying.
That's a good point.
What's that doing there?
But that's a good question.
Crazy.
So 8 billion people
Are being controlled by 100 families.
Who are these families?
These are the elite oligarchs that control the planet. You know, they literally run us. They tell us what to do, hear, see, smell, taste, touch, feel, where we can go, where we can't go. Don't cross over that invisible line, because if you do, you know, you're illegal and all this other kind of crazy stuff.
Most famous alien abduction claims. Historical context. Our journey begins with a look at the historical context of alien abductions. From ancient astronaut theories suggesting extraterrestrial influences in early civilizations to the iconic 1961 Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, we uncover the roots of these mysterious tales. How have stories of otherworldly encounters shaped human culture and spirituality through the ages? Eyewitness accounts. Hear directly from individuals who claim to have been abducted. These personal narratives provide a vivid window into the experiences that challenge our
So
understanding.
in 2010, I came home. I was working on this big project called Fort Terra Nova, which I built. And Fort Terra Nova, it was on the History Channel. A Countdown to Apocalypse, the Nostradamus episode. And anyway, so I was working on this project. I come home, I'm looking at ESPN, and I'm looking at sports at about 9 o'clock p.m. All the lights turn dim, the TV turns off, and I thought my kids were playing a trick on me, because they lived up in the room behind me, up on the second floor. And I look up, and there's nobody there. When I turn around, there were these two beings right there.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. And, whew. Man, hold on.
Whoa.
Sorry.
No. Okay, so when you started telling this story just right now, I want to point something out.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm skeptical about everything. I just want to let you know.
Yeah.
I could believe there was one physical sensation that I saw in you that kind of freaked me out. I'm not gonna lie. Crying, people can put that on.
True.
You started to perspire.
Yeah.
I know. So they were there. They had the big almond eyes like you see on TV. I swear they did.
So you had two beings in front of
But
you.
they didn't look like they were real eyes. They looked like coverings of some type. And they didn't communicate with me through any kind of telepathy that I could tell, but I felt like my brain was shaking in my skull to the point where it started hurting, and I started screaming, but no sound was coming out of my throat. I could feel the air coming out, but I couldn't hear it myself.
And you were awake during this period. You weren't
was
taking
awake.
a nap or anything like
Taking
that?
a nap, no psychedelics.
Of course, yeah.
And my whole house, everyone was in. My wife at the time, my ex-wife was in the bedroom right behind the next wall. My girls were in that side of the house. It split floor plan. My boys were in that side of the house. The house was full of people. Nobody heard us or anything. I was screaming. A few seconds later, it stops, and they turn around, and they don't walk like a person. They kind of dangle. So they kind of dangled away, and they went right through the wall. And then, boom, the TV comes back. The lights come back to normal color. That's when I went running around the house, and it was just traumatic for everybody, you know? And it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. There was other reasons why, but, I ended up my one son, Giovanni, he's told me I'm scared to even come around you. And still to this day, he rarely ever calls me or comes around. It's kind of like I lost my son. I made no money off of this. I got no exposure off of this. That's why I kept it quiet for so long. Lost my family, created a lot of dissension. I remember we were on the highway one day, and my wife was driving at the time, my ex-wife, and she slammed on the brakes, and it was like, just get out of the car, because the kids were scared. And I was like, I'm sticking to my story. I'm not changing my story, because this really happened to me. And they just didn't want to hear it. But her parents were Jehovah's Witnesses, so everything was of the devil.
Yeah.
And so it was a pretty traumatic experience. It took a long time to talk about it. The only reason why I came out with that information was because I started running into a lot of people at conferences that would come up to me and tell me that they were having these experiences. They were horrified to talk about them. So I felt like if I would talk about it, I would give them strength for them to have expressed themselves and walk in their truth and believe in their experience that they had.
Okay.
What common elements do these stories share, and how do they diverge? Explore the emotional and psychological impact of such extraordinary encounters. Wowzers! Hit the like button. It's free 99. Incidents of contact with beings purported to be from other planets are a phenomenon that played a part in characterizing the 20th century. For many skeptics, these stories are nothing more than the result of charlatans looking for attention. But for many others, these stories are widely believed to be true. From sinister alien abductions, medical experiments, and extraterrestrial sex, here are 4 of the most interesting and famous alien abductions.
Wow. Are you the first black guy to see a UFO?
No, I'm not the first black guy. I'm just one of the, no, I'm not, probably not one of the first, because I know there was Barney and Barney Hill. Barney Hill was a black guy who came out, I think it was in the 60s or 70s, about his abduction situation with him and his wife. And him and his wife were abducted, and they gave an account of what these beings showed them as where they came from. And nobody knew where the Zeta Reticuli star system was at that time. It didn't exist in our star maps. Later on, it came out. A person says, wait a minute, and they put it together and said, this is Zeta Reticuli. We found this star system now. Now we know where they say they were from.
Happened on September 19th, 1961, in a rural part of New Hampshire. Betty and Barney Hill were driving back from a vacation in Montreal and Niagara Falls at night. While Barney was driving, Betty noticed a light in the sky that looked like a shooting star, but was moving erratically, including vertically. She urged her husband to stop the car, and they pulled over at a picnic spot near Twin Mountain. With them was their dog, Delcy. They both exited their vehicle and took turns with their binoculars looking at the object, which was clearly visible and traveling across the face of the moon. Betty's sister had claimed to have seen a flying saucer before, so Betty was confident that this was what she was observing. Barney, however, was not convinced. He thought it was a commercial airliner until it rapidly changed direction and moved toward them. He realized there was no possible way it could be an airplane. They got back in their car and drove off slowly, following the object as it slowly descended and flew over the surrounding area. Betty claimed that the craft was longer than 60 feet and seemed to be rotating. Suddenly, the craft zoomed toward Betty and Barney. They stopped the car and Barney got out. The craft was close, and Barney could see figures through windows. One of the beings communicated the message, "Stay where you are and keep looking." That was one of the last things Betty and Barney would remember that night. Here is Betty Hill's bust of one of the aliens that abducted her and her husband. When they woke up, they felt uneasy and knew that something had happened, but their memories had disappeared. When they got home, they noticed their watches had stopped working. Barney's shoes were scuffed, and Betty's dress had been ripped at the hem and had a strange pink powder on it. Several days afterward, Betty started having dreams in which she and her husband were stopped by short gray men wearing blue suits and military-style cadet caps, who took them into the forest. In her dreams, she recalled being in a trance. Later, both Barney and Betty would undergo hypnosis sessions to regain their lost memories. Barney recalled being told to close his eyes and being put into a trance-like state. He remembered the beings mumbling in a strange language, but communicating with him via telepathy, telling him not to be afraid. Betty's hypnosis sessions revealed her memories to be consistent with Barney's memories, but they differed slightly from her dreams, generally in minor details such as the visitors' appearances, the technology on the spacecraft, and the order of events. Betty drew a star map from her memories, later identified as pointing to the Zeta Reticuli star system.
Describing things that have not been discovered yet, and then they do become discovered.
Exactly.
It adds some credibility.
Yeah.
Okay, so with your situation, you believe you saw a UFO.
Yeah.
Do you think that the UFO people, the aliens or whoever they are, do you think they choose the people that see them, or this is happenstance?
If you start researching these alien abduction experiences or these alien sighting experiences, which there are now over 7 million of them documented in MUFON, you start to see a similarity between the stories and repetitiveness with some of the visitations or sightings or whatever you want to call them. And so it's quite possible that they isolate and interact with specific people at specific times. I mean, to what agenda? At the end of the day, we're like ants.
Antonio Villas-Boas. On October 16, 1957, while working at night on his family farm in Brazil, 23-year-old Antonio Villas-Boas claimed to have been abducted by extraterrestrials. He said he saw a large egg-shaped craft with a cupola on top containing a rotating red light. The craft landed by extending 3 legs, after which several 5-foot-tall beings disembarked. Antonio tried to escape on his tractor, but the engine died, and he continued on foot. He was eventually captured by these beings, who wore gray overalls and helmets. He was taken aboard their ship, whereupon they took their helmets off. They had small blue eyes and communicated via a series of animal-like grunts. Once aboard the ship, Antonio was stripped naked and covered in a gel. He was led into a large, semicircular room through a doorway adorned with red symbols. Antonio was later able to recall these symbols with perfect clarity. The beings then took blood samples from his chin before moving him to a third room where he was left alone for half an hour. A gas was pumped into the room, which made Antonio feel nauseated. After this bout of nausea abated, the doors to the room opened, and a naked female alien of the same species joined him. Antonio recalled that she was very attractive with platinum blonde hair and red pubic hair. She had a pointed chin and large cat-like eyes. Antonio felt a powerful attraction to this woman, and they engaged in intercourse wherein instead of kissing him, she nipped him on the chin. After the sexual act, the woman smiled, patted her belly, and pointed upwards before leaving. Antonio was given back his clothes and shown around the ship before being escorted off. When Antonio got home, he realized 4 hours had passed. A medical examination after Antonio made these claims showed that he was suffering from a mild dose of radiation sickness.
Were the beings, did they have like clothes on? Was there anything else discernible about them?
Yeah, they didn't really have on what looked like clothes to me. They weren't really gray. They were almost like brownish, but they had very big eyes, 2 little tiny dots for a nose, a slit for a mouth. They never opened the mouth. They never opened. They never moved at all. They didn't even shake. There was no facial movements. I couldn't discern if they were even real or not real, or, in terms of like being something that was flesh. But their hands were very long and dangly like you see on TV, I swear to you. And I was just like completely shocked. Now, 2 things happened to me after this situation. The first thing was, of course, I scared the hell out of everybody. The second thing was, I kept hearing this voice in my head over and over again. Worldwide telescope, worldwide telescope, worldwide telescope, over and over and over. So finally, the next day I got so tired of this, I couldn't stop this noise, this phrase.
What was the sound of the voice? What was the...
It sounded like my voice.
It's your own voice.
My own voice.
Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson. On October 11th, 1973, Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson were fishing on the banks of the Pascagoula River in Mississippi when Parker was distracted by blue lights reflecting off the water's surface. Originally thinking it was the lights of a police car, the 2 men would instead be the subject of an alien abduction. The 2 fishermen looked up to see a large football-shaped aircraft descending from the clouds. It made no noise save for a hissing sound. The craft hovered above them, and 3 creatures appeared, floating in the air and moving toward Parker and Hickson. Parker described the beings as having pincers for hands and robotic-looking slits for mouths. One was necklace and gray, while the other 2 seemed to have more feminine shapes. The creatures wrapped their pincers around the 2 fishermen's necks, but the 2 men did not fight back. Parker recounts a sensation of numbness and no fear whatsoever. He was in a trance-like state, and the 2 men were taken aboard the spaceship where they were experimented on. Hickson recalled a large machine resembling a giant eye moving over his body, and that he was surrounded by 5-foot-tall beings. The 2 fishermen later found themselves back on the riverbank as if nothing had happened. They went to the police and told their story. Captain Ryder did not believe them, and after the interview left them in the interrogation room with a hidden recording device in the hopes of hearing one of them give evidence that the whole story was a hoax. But the conversation that happened between the 2 men gave credence to their claim. Hickson said to Parker, "Jesus Christ, God have mercy, I thought I'd been through enough of hell on this earth. And now I've got to go through something like this, but they could have, I guess they could have harmed us, son. They had use. They could have done anything to us." Parker responded, "I just want to cry right now. What's so damn bad about it is nobody's going to believe us." For decades, the 2 didn't speak of the event, but after Hickson died in 2011, Parker wrote a book that was published in 2018. Since then, other people who lived in the area have come forward saying that they too saw a UFO that night.
The sound of the voice. What was the...
It sounded like my voice.
It's your own voice.
My own voice.
Echoing worldwide telescope. Worldwide.
Over and over and over again. So I go to my computer. Back then, Google wasn't a big name yet. It was excite.com. So I get on excite.com. I type in worldwide telescope, but you can type it in on Google now. First thing popped up was worldwidetelescope.org, and I almost fell out of my chair. Worldwidetelescope.org is a site where all the space probe data from all the missions into space exists based on taxpayer and research data. So you can download this. Back then you had to download it. You couldn't just web. You didn't have www4, whatever they call it now. But now you can just run it from the app, from the browser. But back then you had to install it. You can still install it if you want. I go in there, I go in, and I go, okay, what is this? And I see Moon, Mars, you know, all these other planets and so forth and star systems. I click on, okay, click on Mars. I click on Mars, then I see panoramas pop up. I go, oh, panorama. I click on panoramas. The next thing I know, I see the names of panoramas. So I click on McMurdo Valley. I go into McMurdo Valley, and I start seeing things that don't belong.
What's a panorama?
It's like
just an image?
A wide image, but it's not just a
it.
regular image. It's an image that allows you to zoom in, zoom out, pan left and right from the rover's perspective.
So you're looking at images that have been taken from spacecraft.
From the Mars rovers.
The Mars rovers.
Yeah.
Of
Spirit
Mars.
rover and Opportunity rover.
But they are of Mars, or they're of?
They're of Mars, on Mars.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Spirit rover is no longer operating because one of the last images it transmitted looked really strange. I think they just blew it up or something. they never turned it back on after that one. But these things that I saw on the surface between the presidential panorama and also McMurdo Valley, they didn't look like they belonged on Mars. They looked like broken down structures from the Middle East. And I was like, what the hell is this? And the more I looked, the more of these anomalies I kept seeing. So it led me down a whole rabbit hole into anomaly hunting. That anomaly hunting got me into researching these ancient civilizations. That's how it happened. That's literally how it happened. So because of that experience, I became an expert in ancient civilizations, literally.
4. Travis Walton. American forestry worker Travis Walton went missing on November 5, 1975, while working in Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. Travis was riding on a truck with 6 of his co-workers when they spotted a saucer-shaped object hovering above them about 110 feet, 34 meters away. Travis dismounted the vehicle and went to investigate the anomaly. A beam of light shot forth from the craft, knocking Walton unconscious, and his colleagues drove away in terror. Walton claimed that he awoke in a hospital-like room and was being observed by 3 short, bald creatures. He fought with them until 3 humans restrained him and put a transparent plastic mask over his face. He lost consciousness, and the next thing he remembered was walking along a highway 5 days later, catching a glimpse of the spacecraft as it disappeared into the sky. All of Travis Walton's co-workers took polygraph tests, and except for one inconclusive result, they all passed. In 1978, Walton wrote The Walton Experience, a book detailing his claims which was later adapted into the movie Fire in the Sky, 1993. The movie was critically acclaimed and remains one of the most popular movies about alien abduction. Walton sometimes appears at UFO conventions and hosts his own UFO conference in Arizona. While these stories of alien abductions may be gripping and have received much public and media attention, they have many skeptics who claim these claims are, among other things, episodes made up to cover psychological trauma, examples of attention-seeking, or simply ways to make money. Whatever the case, these stories have become famous and have sparked our interest in investigating aliens and UFO abductions. Perhaps one day we'll know the truth about alien encounters, but until then, they remain a mystery.
That's how I got into it.
And do you feel, is this an example of the...
Yeah, that's the Spirit rover right there on the upper left. And there's a lot of anomalies. We've documented so many crazy anomalies over the years. And I can send you some if you want to pop them in there. Just some crazy stuff that made CNN, that made CNBC, Fox News. A lot of our stuff has been featured in the news. We've downloaded over 1 million of these panoramas from the space agencies, and we've now documented over 60,000 anomalies. Things that don't belong there. Everything from pyramids to ankhs.
Yeah, what is the craziest image that you have documented?
The craziest image I would have to say would be this object that looks like, I gotta say looks like, because we're not there, looks like an airplane. Another one would be this statue on the side of Victoria Crater. And I can pull these up and give them to you. Another one would be these ankhs. We found several ankhs laying around in the sand.
What's an ankh?
The Egyptian ankh. The cross with the loop on top.
Oh.
Yeah, what are those doing up there? And my hypothesis that I came up with. Human beings are an abandoned seed colony on this planet. And we have had some influence due to people violating what I would call a prime directive. We've been engaged in a way that we weren't supposed to be engaged, and we've been given technologies that have sped us up far past where we should be right now. including here this AI thing is coming, right? And that's no oversight, no nothing, and it's just being unleashed on us. Again, more advancement in the blink of an eye that we're not ready for, spiritually or consciously. And it put us in a predicament. And I believe that there are people out there that are watching us, I do mean people, that are watching us and observing us to see when we're gonna go from being babies that are learning how to crawl, to learning how to walk, to learning how to run, to being adolescents, to even then becoming, and consciously in the spirit, to becoming full-grown adults. I think that mankind is a baby learning how to crawl. And every now and then when a baby learns how to crawl, it plops down on its stomach, right? Because it has to get the strength. We've plopped down on our stomach a few times. Those will be some of the hiccups in our civilization right now. Eventually, we will grab onto the edge of a table and pull ourselves up and start taking steps.
What are the hiccups?
Hiccups, racism, slavery, inquisitions, religion.
Atomic bombs, maybe?
Atomic bombs, technologies that we're not ready for. All these things are the hiccups, right? Police brutality. My dad was killed by police, And so all these things, you look at it, and from a perspective of right now, it looks like things are getting worse. But it's actually the greatest time to be alive. Mm-hmm. There's no bubonic plague, there's no black plague, there's no Spanish flu. Those things almost wiped out human beings.
Yeah.
There's no papal inquisitions, there's no American Holocaust, which nobody talks about. 111 million indigenous natives of the Americas slaughtered in 70 years. Nobody talks about that, but that happened, right? And so that's not happening right. I can go outside, you can go outside. We don't see dead bodies laid all over the street right now. Now, are there things going on like in Israel and Iran and all these other things? Yes. But overall, on a mass consensus, it's the greatest time to be alive. Yeah. And so we're at the stage now where we have an opportunity to grab onto the edge of the table and pull ourselves up and begin to take those first steps. But after we take that step, what's gonna happen? We're gonna fall and we're gonna cry. But when the challenge is when we pull ourselves back up, how long will it take for us to get a good walking gait? What is the definition of walking? Controlled falls. We have to learn how to control our fall. They're running us, and governments are put in place to work for the people, but they got it flipped and they got us working for them. Right. And telling us what they're gonna do to us if we don't listen to them. That's the opposite of what it's supposed to be.
So isn't this what they learned from the
you learned it.
Anunnaki?
They learned it, and they learned it real well.
But that's what the Anunnaki, at least that's what you're saying, that they did for the human race, right?
But the problem, the reason why the world it is today, why we have this boot on our neck, is because it's because of us. We're the problem. The 8 billion are the problem.
Because we haven't elevated our consciousness to the level that...
They're sharks. A shark smells blood, a shark attacks.
Right.
A shark is gonna be a shark. How come we as 8 billion people haven't stopped falling for these divide and conquer tactics and stop fighting each other over the scraps and realize who the real enemy is?
The mythical time machine has arrived in the present moment of time and space. Thank you for watching. If you're looking for unique gifts and gadgets, you should check out meggdigital.com.